in this country.
Yeah, we definitely don't do that, and unfortunately that's something that we oftentimes don't pay attention to and things of that nature. Now, one of the things that we were talking to Lone about earlier, and I've noticed it more and more, is that with this particular round of activism, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened before. I mean, it probably happened even with MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., and things of that nature, but it seems to me that there's a lot more unity of purpose. I'm seeing a lot more people that are fighting against these kind of causes, be it the Confederate statues, be it the immigration things that are going on, be it whatever some of the other concerns that people have in the movement and everything. But it seems that there's more across-division kind of unity that we might not have seen in the past, like between the African-American community and the Latin community, between those in the LGBT and certain members of the religious community, between, as you just mentioned, even some of the young and old dynamics. And I was wondering, in your own work and in your own observations, are you seeing something similar, or do you think that they're still creating those divisions that are able to divide us?
No, I am seeing a lot more unity, but I think that some of it has to do with the fact that there's been so much more overt negative rhetoric asking to take away things that allow for quality of life for so many people. And I think that while those things were hidden or a little more veiled in terms of the way our leaders would talk about those things, and when I say our leaders, I mean like elected officials and other folks who have power in key institutions, that when they were being more veiled, I think it was easier for people to sort of not be as awake about those things in the general public or in more emerging activists. And I think that with more heated language and also just quite downright terrorist and offensive language, people are coming together because there's no such thing as pretending that could be taken in any other way, that language about immigrants or about the LGBTQ community or about people who are Muslim, whoever the group that's being targeted by, folks in power, it's no longer covert. And I think that does make it salient for people that, you got to know what side you're on when those comments come up. But what I will say is that what I still feel like there's a lot of work to do on is helping people understand not just the dynamics of how those words make you feel, and that we don't want people to be threatened with words, right? But I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done about the way the structures work, the way the government works, and how it's not working for some folks, how, just all these levers of power and how they do and don't work. I think that the more technical information is sometimes still missing, and so that helps to allow those things to continue. And so and don't get me wrong, this is not meant to be shade at anything, while we might take down the gestures, like the statues of white supremacy, we still have to dismantle other pieces of the structure in terms of how our systems work in society. And so that is a part, but if you do one without the other, we're still going to be here.
And that's one of the things I was going to ask is one of the things that I've noticed in the past, and I think people that are even part of my circle are still guilty of this, is that while we talk oftentimes about how people are still intimidated, that even though we're in 2017, we still have people that are intimidated by an African-American brother if they're in the elevator with them and everything, that they still have those stereotypes. I also think that we have stereotypes revolving around the Latin community, because you still have people that if they hear somebody of your background or one of the other Latin countries speaking in Spanish, then automatically they have this stereotype that this fear that they might be talking about them, even though there's a good possibility that they're just discussing the latest recipe that they got in mind, and they ain't got nothing to do with you on the elevator whatsoever.
Right. Well, Deepak Chopra, a long time ago, I heard him on a panel saying, what people think of me is really none of my business, right? But then I want to say that I forgot who said this, that added another little piece to it. But if you can do something about what you think of me, then it's my problem. And I think that was James Baldwin. And so for me, I'm not so busy, worried about, do you like me? Do you have a good opinion of me? I'm only concerned about whether or not you could turn me down for a loan, or whether I won't get into a school of my choice, or if I can't get hired because you have these race-based beliefs about me. And so that's when I get concerned about it, around the structural pieces. But for me, the fight for humanity, for liberation, for justice has never been about whether or not people like me. And I think we need to be real clear about that. I don't care if you think I'm talking about you on the elevator when I speak Spanish to my family. I only care if you want to arrest me because I'm speaking something other than English. Things like that.
Yeah, so you're more concerned about the more important issues as to like whether it's going to be something that might impact you on a direct level, not what somebody's theory of you is if you're speaking Spanish to your family.
I mean, humanity's going to have all kind of pettiness towards each other and lots of joy and happiness, you know. We're all going to have opinions of each other. Oh, I don't like her shoes, or, oh, I don't like her hair, or, you know, I think her voice is great, you know, whatever. But really where it matters is the structural pieces.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, because oftentimes people just get caught up in all kinds of negative things that really don't have anything to do with anything whatsoever because of whatever their own stereotypes are and everything. And while it might be, I've heard it said that a person of color cannot be a racist based on the fact that they are a person of color. That I think is probably true. But at the same time, we all do have our own little stereotypes and things of that nature. So I'm sure that there are people that associate stereotypes that they have that exist when they see, say, the Hispanic lady with the brother or the white lady with the brother, that they are going to make certain assumptions about what's going on, even though that might not have anything to do with the reality of what's really happening. But people just get kind of like stuck up in these little crazy stereotypes and stereo games and things of that nature. But I had a point and I was ready to make it, but I will get to that later. Dean, you still with me?
I'm still here, brother.
So what are you thinking about the discussion? As you can tell, Ideal has been involved in a lot of different things in society, and it's definitely still involved in a lot of things that are going on in the community and things of that nature. And she's actually moved more, which we did not get into the philanthropic side of, like, giving money to people that are trying to fight against different social justice and things of that nature. Because you've been involved with, what's the trust you're involved with again?
Who, me?
Ideal?
Oh, okay.
Say again?
I said, what's the organization you're involved with now?
I'm sorry. So, I still work in public health campaigns, and so I currently work at the Kate B. Reynolds Charitable Trust.
Right. So she's now working in the trust area of the public health campaign, and is actually working with one of the major foundations. And that foundation, their focus is health issues, but they are actually, what kind of organizations do they give money to? People that might be learning more about that foundation.
So sometimes we partner with clinics, hospitals, community-based organizations that are doing community-wide efforts for health. Really, we see that lots of people have an opportunity to be partners in health improvement. And so this isn't just directly health-related organizations that can be part of, the family, I should say. But I think that we have a wide vision about who all can do this work. And so we focus mainly in rural communities as we try to improve the health in communities that have often suffered quite a bit economically. And so we seek to try to bring relief to those communities and thinking creatively with community members about how to bring about health improvement.
So that's some great work that has to be done in this community big time, because that's another area that, unfortunately, because of things that go on in our current administration, has been targeted big time, because a lot of the things that are happening in healthcare, and particularly in rural areas, seem to be targeted more and more, as there seems to be more threats toward even some of those things being either cut down or reduced.
And that's been a tough thing to watch.
So we mentioned it earlier, and I was just wondering, and you kind of alluded to it, but we talked about some of the unity that's going on. But when you're talking to youth activists and things of that nature, what advice do you give them in order to have them involved with the old guard, and vice versa? What advice do you give to the old guard in order for them to hear some of the voices?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost with like the young folks, show up, and, when you find opportunities, definitely, show up and ask good questions. That there isn't, I know it sounds like really old school trite advice, but there really is no such thing as a dumb question. And so there's no way to elevate your skills, to get connected to history, to fill in the gaps that you may need support on, unless you let us know what it is that you don't know and where you'd like to grow or what you're interested in. So definitely just show up and share, hey, I want support in this. And don't just settle for busy work, and don't settle for adults that tell you that you are the leaders of tomorrow. That phrase always irks me, because you're not living in a world that's just fake astroturf today until you become 18. You are living in the real world right now, and this is a very real moment. Despite how young you might be, it is very real now, and so there's no reason for any adult to tell you that your participation should be of lesser sort of importance or sidelined with busy work, when really, with the proper training and support, you can definitely be a partner, a robust partner at the work. So that's what I would say, is just look for opportunities, be bold and ask for adults to make room for you at the table, even in places that might not have proactive spaces for you as a young person to be in. Just go ahead and jump right in. That position that I lobbied for at the university didn't exist before, and it started with me asking a question of Dr. Irvin, who was the director at the time, the special assistant to the chancellor for the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And I asked him, I said, why aren't these programs in place? And we just had lots of long, deep conversations about this. And eventually he gave me a shot. I worked for free for a whole year before he created the position officially on the payroll. But it's one of the things that I was willing to sacrifice en route to trying to create a lasting resource at the university. And Latino students on the campus have since done so much to expand their presence on campus and to build spaces where the issues of the Latinx community can be more broadly discussed. And so I showed up, I asked questions, I stayed at the helm, I didn't back away. I was willing to make mistakes and grow from them and be taught. I was willing to be taught. So that's what I would say for the young folks. As far as the elders, what I would say is don't let the trauma of your past life inhibit you from giving young people a chance. Sometimes we want to protect young people so much from the hardships that we faced as we did advocacy work, whether it was dealing with very traumatizing frontline work around racism in the civil rights movement. And I think that sometimes those experiences have hurt us so deeply and we haven't healed enough from them. And then the idea of young people getting back into the saddle on some of these efforts with us and getting out there and suffering some of the same things that we may have done, whether it's going to the legislature or facing off at a rally. I think that sometimes we protect young people too much to the point where we don't allow them to have access to the real work because we don't want them to be disappointed or turned off or hurt. And while I do think that there is an element of being aware of what is appropriate in certain circumstances and providing for enough safety, I think that hiding the difficulty of the work and not leaning into the talents and the support that young people can provide our movement work is a huge mistake. We don't have the luxury of leaving the capacity of our young people on the table. We do not have that luxury in this moment. I don't think we've ever had that luxury. And so young people make up a quarter of our communities. And if a company said that they did a survey of everybody in a neighborhood and left out a quarter of the residents, we would say that wasn't enough, that wasn't okay for them to just say, oh, we're not going to ignore a whole quarter of the community. And so I think adults need to kind of think about their perspective that a quarter of the community, young people are part of your community, and that if you're going to do community work, you have to include members from every sector of your community. And youth or young people are definitely a formidable sector and need to be a part of the work, need to be held close, need to be taught, but we need to do that in a way that is developed